Hello and welcome to our third episode of the Locked Ones podcast, aka Localized Ones, the show where we talk about all things film translation, including subtitling, closed captioning, dubbing, and audio description. I'm Rachel, your co-host for today. I'm a subtitler and translator and committee member of SUTTLE, the Subtitlers Association.
My name is Bill Skopelitis. I've been a subtitler for about 10 years, and I'm also a language lead. I work with a lot of streamers, studios, and I'm also the chief meme officer of Sidle, which is a made-up title I created for myself.
And today we're joined by Isabelle Leblanc, former globalization partner manager at Netflix. Welcome, Isabelle. Thank you so much for joining us today. So prior to Netflix, you worked in vendor management at Mercedes-Benz and Uber. How
Yes.
did you end up working in entertainment?
Well, the story is not that interesting, actually. I just saw a nice vacancy. I thought, okay, this is nice. I applied for the job, and well, the rest is history. But the one thing that is nice to know is Netflix hires for experts. So you can be an expert in vendor management, you can be an expert in HR, and the rest, the industry will follow. That's something that you can learn. Skills and expertise is not necessarily something that a company wants to have on the job. So that's how I rolled into entertainment, actually.
So it must have been quite different from working in the car manufacturer or Uber. We imagine it was pretty cool as well.
Well, obviously, working for Netflix is pretty cool, and the brand is super sexy. And the hustle and the bustle and everything that's going on is, of course, fantastic. And Netflix really is a company like Uber and Google, basically, that became a verb. And it's very, very cool to have that on your resume and to be part of that journey. So 100%. I must say, working in entertainment is also fabulous because everybody knows everybody. It's a super small industry. So you build up relationships much, much faster than you do in any other industry. And a funny anecdote here, I once had an interview with the director of McDonald's because I wanted to start. There was a nice role open, and I thought, okay, I have the expertise to work at McDonald's. And then he started this whole discussion with me why I was not the best candidate because I did not understand the hamburger business. And so this was for me such a strange, or not strange, a different point of view that I thought I can learn the hamburger industry. It's easier to learn me the hamburger industry than learn me how to talk to customers and do global supply chain. So with that belief, I think Netflix and I found in each other similar minds because we believe that an industry can be taught to a certain extent for certain roles, obviously.
Well, that's interesting. Can I just ask if you had to describe your last role at Netflix as a genre? Would it be like an action thriller, workplace comedy?
It would actually be a lot of genres tied, like a psychedelic movie, maybe, or a series.
That
I
makes
think
sense.
most people that know me know I love humor. I think that makes the world go around. So I don't take myself that serious. So if I had to choose anything, it would be a funny series. But looking at the dynamic at Netflix, the things happening in the industry, the things happening in the company, all the elements around that, it will be somewhere between a psychedelic a movie and a very nice humoristic series. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. If I had to take a guess, I think I've never worked for Netflix directly, but I think that sounds pretty accurate from at least from our side of the right. So can I just ask again, as a partner manager, you
Mhm.
bridge the gap between a streaming service and its partners. I've worked with a lot of partners, Netflix partners as well. Um, so when we freelancers talk amongst ourselves,
Mhm.
and we might not necessarily discuss detail or any of that, but everybody has an idea of what their ideal client will look
Yeah.
like, or their favorite vendor. um, there are red flags, there are green flags as far as we concerned. From your side, how did that look like red flags, green flags for vendors, for individuals? Um, how would you describe that?
So I think as a vendor manager, and as the vendor manager that you want to be for a specific company, the worst thing that could happen to me is that a vendor fires me as a client, right? So for me, it's very, very important that there is a situation created, a relationship created that is a mutual benefit, mutually beneficial. And obviously, you have the business side of things. So the contract, the metrics, the finance pieces, the processes, the systems, all of that. But there is a way to go about that. And having experienced being fired once and being known as the nasty client, that is not something that I want to experience ever again. So that helps you understand better what makes good great in how to build the relationships, even when it's tough, because it's the same in a relationship. When you're in love, everybody looks at things through pink glasses. But what you actually need to talk about is what are the reasons for divorce and how are we going to divorce, right? Because when the moment is there, you cannot talk normally to each other because everybody is angry, etc., or there are a lot of emotions. So making sure that you're super transparent in the relationship and that you build a human relationship next to the business side, so that there is open communication and you can talk about difficult things and also and celebrate great things. I think that sets apart the good from the great. For me, I had to be fired once as a client from a one of the customer or the vendors that I had, to come to that realization that there's a big role for me or a person in my position that you play in making sure that there is a mutual win-win situation.
Mhm. It's interesting that you're making that analogy, though, because the way I see it, vendors and clients, buyers, even as freelancers, it is like that a little bit, like a marriage, like a long-term relationship. You gotta nurture it. You gotta know your boundaries. You gotta have the respect there. So yeah, yeah. It's very
And
interesting
it's
to get your
also,
take on this.
as a company, what type of company do you want to be to your vendors, right? Or to your partner? Do you want to have strictly an Excel vendor relationship? Do you see this more as a partnership? How do you want to design that role and be known in the industry? What is the DNA of the company? What is the DNA? What's the DNA of the client? What's the DNA of the vendor? Does that match? Sometimes it does not match. And like again in a relationship, some people do not work. It just does not work, right? So having
Things change, or yeah, definitely.
context change, well, name it, different direction, different strategy, and you need to be able to continue communication in order to say, okay, this now we're parting ways because this is not what we want at this particular point in time, which is also okay.
And how do you nurture that relationship when you're talking via email or there's so many different partners? When you think of all the different freelancers, it's very difficult. For example, when a change is implemented, a tool changes, how do you share feedback in a way where everyone can be heard, but also without, it's quite a tense area as well. How do you manage that? How do you keep everyone happy in their
I,
marriage?
I would say one meeting in person is better than 100 meetings online.
Hmm.
Uh, and particularly for somebody in my role, because you can see the person's energy, the other person can see your energy, your intentions. And the majority of business is not done in the office at the table. It's done during coffee, during a drink, during a dinner, in the karaoke bar. So that is where the relationship is built. And I think, well, for the people who know me, yes, I'm Dutch. Yes, I'm very direct. If something is shit, it's shit. If something is great, it's great. And I think being very intentional about who I am, about my reputation, how I want to show up as the client's representative. I think that it gives some trust, builds trust in the relationship. And if you're consistent with that
Hmm.
approach, people start to understand where you come from really, really fast. And you might not like my approach, you might not like me, all fine. It's still business. We need to work together, hopefully in a really nice way, and we have a laugh. But building that trust and building that relationship is the most important work, basically, for a partner manager.
It's so important when we're all stuck behind our screens and you might not even know what someone looks like or how they talk or when you're just dealing with them over email. So your work at Netflix didn't stop at partner management, though. You also served as chair of the Women at Employee Resource Group,
Yeah.
where you tackled important everyday stigmas, challenges that women face at work. Could be menopause, menstruation, the choice to have children. The translation industry is a very female space. Over 70% of translators worldwide identify as women, yet there are still huge equality gaps. How was it being a woman in such a senior role at Netflix? Did you face any of those challenges or stigmas? And how did leading that group change your work?
Oh wow, I can talk for hours.
We have
Oh,
time.
feel free.
In case you
Feel free.
wondered.
Yeah.
So two steps back, basically. When Isabel was small and grown up, I'm a true believer in exploiting your talents in the right way, in nurturing your talents. You're a translator, Bill. I know you're a translator, but you have more talents. Maybe you're a great cook, or maybe you're a very talented swimmer. Whatever it is, you have a person has multiple talents, and I believe in nurturing all of that. And see where the opportunities for you as an individual are. Obviously, when I grew up in an which is, well, I'm no day older than 25, just for the record. But in my childhood, there was still that very the woman stays at home, finds a nice man to earn money, and has a couple of kids, stays at home for the kids. That
Mhm.
was still very ingrained in my childhood. And that was something that I was like, no, I want to exploit the world, or explore the world. I want to see where my talents can bring me. And so I started in that frame. I started my career. So as I was progressing my career, obviously I faced a lot of interesting situations where I was passed for a promotion, where I was sexually harassed by a manager, where all these situations where in that particular time frame was not spoken about, because
Mhm.
you're a woman, you have to take it as it comes. And if you're passed by a male colleague for a promotion, suck it up, that's it. And this is just a man's world and you have no voice, basically, like that. So I progressed my career. And after all those experiences, I started to work for Mercedes. Mercedes is honestly still the highlight of my career because the job was so challenging. And with challenging, I mean, I love a big, audacious challenge. Give me the impossible thing to do, and I will make sure it's done. So I needed to implement a new call center system in 55 countries, traveled the world, and at the same time manage the external partners who executed the call center services for Mercedes. But you get in touch with a lot of cultures. So I needed to navigate through all these cultures where me, with my big Dutch mouth, very direct, we don't waste time, we get to work, let's do it. You need to now tread lightly and navigate through
Yeah.
all these interesting situations and cultures that you face. And then by the end of the 4 years, this was a 4 years job, where obviously I met a lot of people. There's one person that a lady, young woman, that came up to me, and she gave me a little gift. And I will never forget this. She said to me, Isabel, you have been such an inspiration for me, and female in this role, kicking ass, and just go for what you think is right, and what you think you have to do. And I was like, oh my god. uh, in my head I was still this woman that was fighting the
Mhm.
system, and here is this young lady, and poof, all of a sudden I'm a role model. And that moment in time was so significant for me that I can still talk about this like it was yesterday. That from that moment I've been starting to look at things slightly different and think, okay, let me take all that experience that I have, and let me now, with who I am and what I do and the experience that I have, let me help others get there. And for me, equality always has been extremely important in work, in relationships, in opportunities, in just life. And then obviously the experiences that I had, I think, strengthened that belief that I need to fight for equality. And to this day, even though I'm not out in the street burning bras, but the purpose is the same,
Mhm.
right? And so becoming the chair of women at Netflix was for me, oh my God, this is, um, uh, it was a personal achievement with the journey that I had, but I also felt it as my responsibility to utilize my personality, my experience, my open mindedness, for a greater good. And if that is opening up a conversation about menopause at work, or about endometriosis at work, or about whatever it is where we need to demystify
Mhm.
um, topics, I'm your girl. And also cheer people on, help create allies, because Bill, it's not a group of women for women. It is particularly a group of women who would like to have everybody on board to demystify certain topics and to change certain habits that we have had forever, and explain to you why it's important for us and how we experience things, so that you can understand how that feels. With the last event that I had at Netflix, we actually had a period simulator where we invited, obviously, the conversation was to educate men
Mhm.
about how it is to have a period. Because potentially you're a father of daughters. You are a sister, you are a brother to a sister who is going through things. You are actually the result of a missed period. So you need to have a basic understanding what this means. So
Hmm.
for me, that's very normal to talk about these things. For other cultures or other females or other men, it's not that common to talk about these things. So helping others and putting them in their spotlight, in their strength, also educating them or helping them go through certain things. I think that has become such a part of me, basically. And I think this is why also to the partners, because you're very well informed, Rachel. I think also for the partners, that's why I have been so vocal about that and sharing what I did for women at Netflix, just to be
Hmm.
also an inspiration and spark a conversation at other companies to say, hey, is this something that we need to build up? Is this something that we can cooperate in certain events? And
Yeah.
last International Women's Day, we worked together with basically the Big Five in Amsterdam, and we had this full event with amazing guest speakers, bringing all these, and not only women, we had a lot of men. But to celebrate women and to see where we still need to do some work and to hear perspectives of how other companies work with women at ERG or navigate through certain situations like sexual harassment in the workplace,
Hmm.
which can help be better or build policies around that, uh,
Hmm.
as long as you have a curious mindset.
I would have been very grateful for that when I was a PM, working in these particularly small companies. It's great to see the leaders working on issues like that, but to bring it down so that even the tiniest boutique translation agencies, for example, have programs like that. Um, it's interesting how you're talking about lifting each other up. As freelancers, we see other linguists or other women in the industry potentially as competitors. And in society, women are meant to feel or led to believe that we're competitors instead of seeing each other as allies. How
Yes.
can women, and particularly freelancers or translators, empower each other more um, in our everyday work or lives?
Yeah, fantastic. I wish we were already there. I think if you look at our upbringing, and I think Rachel, to a certain extent, it also counts for you. Bill, not so much for you. I assume this is an assumption on my side, but in society, women are brought up as competitors.
Mhm.
As a young woman, you hear your mother talk about, oh no, not this woman, and oh, you should be better than that, and look at that woman, and she cannot behave herself. You should be better than her. So it's ingrained in women. Only what, 2 generations ago, that was still going on. So I think for us, it's the realization that that's somewhere in you that you actively need to change your mindset.
Mhm.
And also that if you have children, you need to be very conscious in how you raise your daughters and how you raise your sons. Because this competitiveness
Mhm.
is based on envy, is based on jealousy, which will not bring you anywhere in life. Not in relationships, not in the workplace, not for yourself. And I think doing some soul searching in, if you were brought up with that competitiveness, I know I was, how you change your mindset, and do you want to change your mindset, and understanding that envy and obviously competition brings you somewhere when you're in the Olympics, right? I'm not saying rule out a competition. I'm saying rule out competition between women and
Mhm.
raise daughters like they should compete with another woman. And that's not needed. And we can be raised like men, right? This is your buddy.
Yeah.
If I don't like something you did, I will punch you in the face, and that's the end of it, right? And for the rest, we live a harmonious life as friends. For women, unfortunately, that has not been the case, at least when I grew up. So I think, Rachel, to answer your question, sorry, this was a very long anecdote. Again, coming back to my point, I think doing some soul searching internally, actively and intentionally change your mindset. And if you have the experience, and I hope that a lot of people, particularly everywhere, but particularly looking at this podcast, have the experience to see somebody grow. This is mainly the reason why I became a manager, because there is nothing more rewarding than seeing somebody shine in their element, in their strength, and being able to, or helping that individual in the background to put their feet into their own spotlight. I think is the most rewarding thing there is, at least for me.
It can be pretty rewarding, that's true. I see a little bit of that in my role as a language lead, mentoring people, having them thanking you for even the tiniest thing. It's a nice feeling, and at the end of the day, it all comes back, isn't it? It's all good karma, I think. And I don't really have anything to add to all of that, being a man and all. I do have women in my life. I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert, but I am a fan of women, and a man of my time, whatever that means these days. But I just wanted to say, imagine that sort of thing happening like 30, 40, 50 years ago. All those things that you organized, being able to talk so openly about this sort of thing, these issues, it would sound insane at the time, I think, to a lot of people's ears. So I think we've come a long way. That's all I really have to add, really.
Well, thank you, Bill, for cheering women. And obviously, I did not only be the chair of Women at Netflix to talk to women. Particularly making men part of the conversation is building that allyship is, I think, where we can do more and better and helping you understand. But imagine if I would do the things that I did 50 years ago, I would be burned, because not only do I look like a witch with this red hair, talking like that, oh my God, right? But the same question to you, Bill. If you would say now to somebody, oh my God, this gender pay gap, because men are still underpaid looking at women, you also think that would be ridiculous in this day and age, right? So why do we accept it for a woman? And when we turn the table and we flip the script and we say men in the same sentence where normally a woman is mentioned, then all of a sudden we think this is nonsense. This makes no sense. And I think that's
Yeah,
what I love
definitely.
about language, and also where you as linguists come in,
Mhm.
that working with language, because it matters. There is I'm not sure if she's a linguist or journalist, or well, she has many hats. She plays with language, and she posts if there is, for instance, newspaper title, like this particular man had involuntary sex with this woman. She's like, there's no such thing as involuntary sex. That's rape. So working with, and this is, I think,
Mhm.
where people that work with language all the time have such an important role, is to making it right. And right
Well,
is
100%.
right words to address a certain situation, even if it's confrontational.
Hmm.
Yeah, I used to work in media research for 6 or 7 years before I started doing this. And this is exactly the sort of thing we would work on, how the media, puts a spin on things, what's fact, what's a hot take, shades of gray, all of that. We as linguists, as subtitlers especially, we deal with that sort of thing every day. And be it sensitivity, uh, politics, and everything is a little bit political, at least a little bit these days. So always worth thinking about and keeping in mind. I think our producer has a meme, which is, I mean, it's kind of relevant.
um,
um, I think it just shows, like I was saying, we haven't maybe reached the end of the line yet. Maybe we haven't reached the top of the hill yet. But this sort of thing, uh, right? Like a few years ago, nobody would bat an eyelid, but now it's instantaneously recognizable, and you know what this meme speaks to. Um,
And this is what I find about your craft so interesting. These new words that pop up, like mansplaining.
mm,
I think this is a fantastic word, and I'm sorry, Bill, I don't want to offend you, but this is what's happening in true life, right?
every
I'm
day.
sure. I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a
Mansplaining.
fan. I mean, I use it all the time as well. Sometimes, like, I'll start my sentences with "Please correct me if I'm mansplaining this," but so I'm aware it's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a mentality it's hard to get out of when you've been brought up like that, or that's just the way society is. It's you have to really question yourself. I don't know how it would be as a man to put myself in that headspace and to change how you think is quite it's challenging. You have to be willing to change.
100%. And it can be confrontational for yourself, right?
Mm,
Now, if I look back, I think I might not been always the best ally to my fellow women. Um,
yeah.
Difficult to realize, but important to realize in order to do things differently.
Hmm.
100%.
Right. So moving on, I have another one for you.
Yes.
Uh, Okay. Your work involves scaling globally, reliably, and sustainably. Everybody
Yes.
wants everything done at least a little bit faster. Obviously, these days there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of, reshoots, last minute edits, that sort of thing. I'm sure you're very familiar with. But it can be difficult to balance that need for speed with high linguistic quality standards.
Yes.
And we know that firsthand, obviously. Netflix has a great reputation in the industry, basically, for its localization program. A lot of people are very eager to work with them. The standards can be very high, but that can also lead to things like increased levels of stress for freelancers, especially with shifting deadlines, unpredictable schedules, shooting delays, editing delays, all that sort of thing. Plus, we have. I'm putting a lot on you right now. I'm just realizing this,
Yes.
but I guess
Straight.
the question is, especially taking metrics, anxiety into it as well. What steps would you take, or should anyone take in a similar position to make these systems less stressful while maintaining the highest levels of quality?
Yeah, fantastic question. Because obviously, my journey ended with Netflix, but I'm never done because there is always something to optimize, and I have a lot of thoughts about this one. I think if you look at the localization industry, there's a lot of legacy in there for very good reasons. But if you look at the current expectations when it comes to quality, when it comes to speed, there's a lot of things that still need to evolve in the industry. And a lot of people with very creative minds have designed certain processes that might be not the best processes um, um, in for today. So if you look at the process, I think where we there's still a lot of things to win is, for instance, in forecasting and planning. And we all know that great creative minds work on great productions, but they might not always have the perspective of, okay, now the movie is done. Now another great linguist need to put their craftsmanship to work, and that also takes a little bit of time. And then you work with creative people who might not have that view, and you work with a process that might or might not be the best for the expectations that are put upon you. So having that understanding, if there was some sort of, let's say, blue sky scenario, I'm setting up my own company a la Netflix, and I'm producing movies and I want the localization. I think there are some areas where I would do things differently, and I'm throwing it in there. Or I know we're going to talk about this at length, but I'm throwing AI in there in here. But in not, I think not in a way that you expect me to throw it in, because I believe in craftsmanship. So the linguist has a craft working with language, right? But we ask the linguist to do a lot of other things. You need to prepare. Maybe you first need to look at the whole series. I don't know, eight
Mhm.
episodes of Bridgerton or something else. You then potentially need to a gazillion pages of script. Then you potentially have to work with the system while you're not that tech savvy. I'm not saying you're not, Bill or Rachel, but some of the translators might not be. So there is and you have metrics that maybe frighten you, maybe not. Maybe you're used to that, and you have the company you work for who is then doing the communication for you. So you don't have a direct relationship, but you have an indirect relationship with the company. So that's the context in which basically the translators work. But if you have a craft, and that does not only count for translators, that is for everybody that has a very specific expertise. I think AI can help you in, for instance, summarizing the gazillion pages of script,
Mhm.
in guiding you very easily through usage of a system. So a very easy to follow training to refresh your mind. Oh, shoot, what was this about? And then poof, then you have this AI agent helping you, or to tell you in layman's terms, okay, here are you with your metrics, or here's the style guide. This is what changed, instead of you reading all the pages again and just overlooking because the phone is ringing or your mom is at the door, or because we're still working all in real life. So always something is going on, and that you have missed that one line where it says, from now on, do this instead of that. And I think AI can be a tremendous help in that. Not necessarily taking away the craft of the linguist, but
Mhm.
helping structure the context in which you need to work.
Right,
Then,
right.
sorry, I'll pause here. Yes, because I'm quite sure you want to respond to that.
It might surprise you as well, but I'm not actually against that. I'm not 100% against AI, or I'm actually very techy myself. Like I, I had my own computer by the time I was 6. So I'm a big nerd. So when LLMs came out, I was very excited. and I know what they can do and what they can't do, and there's no replacing us right now. I'm fairly confident. I mean, as long as the client cares about quality, that is,
Mhm.
they cannot do what we do at the highest level, at least. But what you're saying, like I've been mentioning this to people, both colleagues and clients as well. There are things it can help us with instead of spending, I don't know, 40 minutes shifting through a 12 season glossary to sort
Yes.
out something or cross reference some consistency thing. And then you find out some dude from 8 years ago made a typo. And then you have to send an email to your vendor, and your vendor might need to liaise with the client, and then it becomes like a whole thing. It just snowballs basically, and
Yes.
we've all had first-hand experience with this sort of thing. um, there are a lot of areas that can actually help us, so I'm actually with you on that. But most people see it as a way to make a quick buck. Okay, I'll set up my own company. Instead of using 100 linguists, I'll just use uh, GDP Pro subscription, and I'm all set. And you do see that kind of thing popping up on, I don't know, LinkedIn or Pros or all the time now. And I've actually made a meme about that as well. And it's usually just a dude with a GPT Pro subscription. Then that's not the way to go about it. And there's a lot of snake oil out there as well, as I'm sure you're aware. But
Well,
yeah,
and it depends on the use case, right? If let's take the short form, the content that is on TikTok, etc., that is now there,
Mhm.
which is fast, which does the transcribing of what is said instantly. You have a lot of companies who do that, and that is the dude with the what did you say, the pro or the go subscription. But that's a very specific use case for a market that is more acceptant of typos and more acceptant of low quality, because they just want to have what is it, 10 second, oh, what did this dude say approximately. So there is a different acceptance from the audience than if you look at Bridgerton, which requires understanding context, a very specific language, because
there's a world of difference.
world of
Mhm.
difference. So for me, it's all about using the right thing for the right audience in the right use case. Obviously, not for the Bridgertons or other cinematic content. And I had a second thought where I know from a freelancer perspective, where you struggle, and where I think there's still a lot of area to win, particularly also with the use of AI, is forecasting. And obviously, what you want, and this is also the journey that I had with Netflix, and this is how I explained it, because we received quite some pushback. Normally, movie planning or content planning is done upfront. In January, you say, okay, we're producing this documentary, the documentary of Madonna. We're going to shoot that now. But since we're only publishing that on the platform in December, even though we have shot a documentary already in February, then we have all the time of the world to localize it, right? So we start only in October. But then what you actually want, because, and God forbid, this is not me wanting to Madonna die. I love Madonna. I love you if you're listening. But let's
Hopefully, she is.
Madonna dies in June. Then you have this fabulous documentary, but it's not yet localized because the planning said December, but you need it. You need it now.
Mhm.
So working with that type of schedule is, okay, we're planning it for December, but we have it localized in the way we want without any rush jobs for anybody in the right quality. Why don't you immediately localize it after it's produced? And then maybe you have to wait 6 months until you get the credits or the royalties as a linguist. But from a planning perspective, you have a job, you know when you have to do it. We can plan it accordingly instead of all these rush jobs. And then, so building that pipeline on the other hand for the freelancers and doing better forecasting. And on the other hand, helping the actual platform to have these things available. And the moment that it becomes apparent, even though you wanted to publish it in December, if you need it in June, it's there. And I think that conversation is a conversation and a topic that needs some sunshining.
I think it's a question of how do we make producers think about localization earlier on, and whose responsibility is it to talk about that? Is it the associations like Subtle? How do we get through to creators to make them appreciate localization? You just mentioned crediting and royalties, and that is another huge topic, at least at Subtle and in the freelance community. Under the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic Works, translators are authors. They should be entitled to crediting, which is something that Netflix does quite well for authors. So if people wait to the end, they can see the credit for the translators. And translators should also potentially earn royalties depending on the country legislation. Too often, though, these rights aren't respected. There are plenty of streaming services who don't credit. It would be wonderful to see credits for everyone involved. So the QCer, in the same way that you would credit people who worked on the show itself.
Yes.
How can we make the producers care more about authors' rights for translators? And do you think they think about it at all?
I don't think this is a producer topic. And why do
No.
I and what do I mean? Let me one step back. If you look at the world of the producer, they have, let's say, 10 to 15 shows under their belt at the same time, any given moment, right? A producer is there to push things through the conveyor belt. And I say that with all the love I have, because I have utmost respect for them, because they work also in a certain context where this show has that particular context, but that team did not provide that. That team did provide the context, but did not provide the dialogue list. This marketing team for this show is in my neck because it's a celebration of whatever, or it's special talent that is in the show. We need to have early clips or early trailers to do a marketing show. So for all these 10 to 15 shows or series of films that they have under their belt at any given time, there is something with all of the 15. So what they need and what they want is partners that are ready, linguists that are qualified to do the job in the best way possible, the fastest way possible, and where producers don't need more problems. They want the system to work, the conveyor belt or the car wash to run smoothly, instead of every time hitting the brakes. Now we need to tackle this problem, or now we need to tackle that problem. The car wash need to run, basically. So you have the teams around that, and obviously now we're talking about producer in the sense of Netflix, but I'm quite sure that with all the other streamers, they have similar roles. The teams in that context need to make sure that these topics are discussed and tackled, like contracts or rates or all the hygienic factors or items around the conveyor belt need to be managed. And credits obviously is one of them. I love your idea of just because in the movie when you have all the credits, why don't put all the names of the QCer and maybe even the project manager or the partner that was, I don't know, right? But everybody wants to be recognized for their job. I think where it becomes a little bit messy is if you is in the countries where you have this royalty structure. Now, who can all claim royalty if that instead of one person are now five people? Um, so I think the topic is not as easy as, oh, let's just put everybody who worked on this show on there. The topic is a little bit broader that needs some thorough discussion and investigation how that can be done in the best way possible. And in that context, it needs to compete with a gazillion other topics that require some deep discussion and or resources that need to make sure that the system updates for the linguists are there, that you can have shortcuts on the dash on the keyboard or whatever fancy functionality that is required in order to help you. So there is then it becomes a matter of prioritization. So I think the topic is a little bit broader and deeper than just let's recognize everybody, even if that's obviously the nice thing to do. And B, it has to compete with other topics that potentially are more important or that are prioritized by a company or somebody.
It's true that we're all working so incredibly hard, not just the freelancers, but everyone in every position at Netflix or the streamers. Everyone's pushed to the max, and even just getting recognition as authors in the first place is a hurdle. But there have been movements like we saw translated in the credits in the video game industry. So I think there are things that we can do as translators, but yeah, at the end of the day, how do we make time for that, and how we have this huge wish list of issues that we'd like to sort, but we're human, everyone's human, and everyone's tired as well.
And you know the problem, right? Because even in the association, you need to prioritize, and one topic becomes more important than another topic because the impact is bigger, or well, whatever the reasoning for prioritization is. But everybody deals with that. Yes. Bill, I think you have a thought.
You can see it brewing.
I have a few. Well, just to say that, again, this depends on the region as well, obviously, like by a lot, both royalties and recognition. Until maybe 10, 15 years ago, I wasn't around back then. I mean, I was around, but I wasn't in the industry. It was pretty standard to not include people, especially in catalog stuff when content gets moved around a lot, and it will end up, at a national TV station, and then somebody else will do a fresh new translation, or will just adapt or conform an older one from decades ago because it's still cheaper than getting a brand new person to do it. So it's complicated, and it's a global industry. It's a global market. I can only begin to imagine, even from our side of the pond, how that must look to navigate. But I will say that Netflix, uh, as a whole, and even from the earlier days, does credit subtitlers.
Yes.
The actual translators working on the subs, they have a very strong policy in favor of that. So that's really good.
Yeah. I think if I recall correctly, we credit by default, and only if the
Yes.
translator decides to
Mm.
not be credited for, it can be a number of reasons, right? It can be a geopolitical content, and people face repercussions, or it can anything like that. But I think Netflix credits by default.
Yeah, and that's really great. We've already touched upon this other topic a little bit earlier, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on short form content, because short form content seems to be taking off. I mean, it's
Yes.
already taken off. It's like
Oh yeah,
hitting the
we're already there.
stratosphere at this point, I think. Shorts, YouTube shorts, TikTok, that sort of thing. I think I've noticed Netflix is kind of slowly making a, dipping its toes in that
Yeah.
pond a little bit lately. I think I read about that in the news. Um, so I don't know. I guess the question is, what do you think? Microdramas, are microdramas the next big thing? Should we give up on series and true crime docs and just all do microdramas? That's not going to be very profitable for us. Let me tell you that, because they're like
Yeah.
2 minutes long.
In general, people want to be entertained, right? If you had a big week, well, let me talk for myself. If I had a big week on Friday night, I don't want to make any decisions, right? I've been working the whole week. I've made hundreds decisions in that week. On Friday night, I just want to grab a bottle of chilled wine out of my fridge, sit on the couch, and be entertained. And for me, entertainment means 90 Day Fiance or some show where I can judge people based on their relationships. Just me in my house and the television and my between us and the bottle of wine, right? But and everybody has this type of entertainment that they want to, and I would not say relax, because then I sit outside in the sun and smell flowers and see the grass grow. But some sort of, okay, I want to be entertained right now. I don't want to think for myself. The pizza guy will ring the bell, and I just want to shut my brain off, right? And if that is with, like me, 90 Day Fiance type of Love is Blind type of show, or if that for other people is with a documentary about nature, or I don't know what your guilty pleasure is, but everybody has something like that. And I think micro dramas and short content fills the same needs, just on a different span. I can sit for 90 days on the couch. Sorry, not 90 days. 90
That
We're
would be a
not
minutes.
bit
judging.
extreme.
90
It's a safe
minutes
space.
on the couch. And other people want to have that type of entertainment when they're commuting home in the train for 20
Mhm.
minutes, and they need a clip for 5 minutes to be entertained. So I think it serves the same purpose. Will it replace things? Hell no. We all know how popular the telenovelas are in Spain and in Brazil, right? Taking that away from such a big audience, no, I don't. I will not be the person that makes that decision, and I don't want to be the person who makes that decision, because you will get the whole country in memes over about you
Oh,
who
there
makes
will be riots, I imagine.
exactly. So I think it's an addition, and I think it's for the linguist particularly an opportunity to think, maybe you're great at that. You know, every linguist has their expertise. It can be anime because you're completely into anime and you know A to Z, all the habits and the terms, terminology, and the names, etc. Short form or micro dramas can be the same. If you think, hey, this is something that I love to do because it interests me, or I'm great in these 10-minute clips or whatever it is, and I know all the characters and I understand the humor and I understand all the drama in there, I think it's an opportunity. And it's up to you to decide, do I want to specialize myself in that? Yes or
Right.
no?
That does make some sense actually, because like you said, a lot of that. I mean, they're called microdramas, but I think they're mostly either comedy, like short sketches, skits, basically, or miniature parodies of
Yes.
relationship situations. That I mean, I haven't. I'm not claiming to be that hip. I haven't been following them that closely, but that's my understanding so far. And I know some people go crazy over them. I know a lot of people with PhD diplomas and all that going crazy about dating shows as well. So again, no judgment. I know a lot of people are like that. They just want to turn their brains off and enjoy some, honest bickering for an episode or two or three. So, and it does seem to make people, enjoy it. So that's the point of entertainment, isn't it? Again, but with the microdramas, I guess for the really successful ones, the people who are making them, or like the studios that keep popping up, who are kind of pivoting and sort of doing that exclusively right now. Um, if they have a base of, I don't know, like 50 million followers, it might be only 2 or 3 minutes long, but then if you can position yourself as a comedy expert, listen, I've worked on The Office or Friends or that sort of thing. I've adapted all the classics. People who are still talking about my brilliant, funny, inventive translations. I'm your man. I'm not gonna do it for $10, even though it's only 2 minutes long. But you're gonna get, the top comedic translator in that region. I guess I could see that working for some people. You can name your price, and provided that you have the base and the income to support proper localization instead of just pushing a button on CapCut and just doing everything through AI, like we were saying earlier. People could afford to pay a decent rate for that kind of thing. I imagine. So we might end up seeing more and more of that actually working in
And I
our
think
favor.
100%, Bill. And I think with the right pricing scheme, obviously this is different from long form. You cannot live from one microdrama a week, right? Potentially, you can live from 8 episodes of Bridgerton. And so, if you price it, I would imagine the price would be different with, let's say, a starting rate. So you start already here. That's baseline, and then per minute, or I don't know, or it's a fixed price. I can see that.
We're
I can
not
see.
gonna we're not gonna be happy with per minute. I can
Yeah.
tell you that
No,
right
not
now.
no. But if you have a baseline starting fee on top ahead,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
which is a given. But
yeah.
I can see a fixed price model there, or the starting fee model, or something like that. But I think that is an evolution, like also long form was an evolution. At Netflix, it took us a long time to understand what the sweet spot was, right? In how to price certain things properly, that it would work for the business, the partner, and the linguist. And I think with now the micro dramas, it's a similar evolution. This is new, so obviously everybody is jumping on this. But in the end, you need to pay the bills. The partner needs to pay bills to the staff that they have managing all those things. And the actual platform needs to earn money about a particular microdrama.
Um, Sort of on that topic, what other trends are you seeing in viewer preferences when it comes to subtitling versus dubbing or some other form of? I know some people like to do a mix of both as well, which I find kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was talking to my football mates the other day, and they were watching something that was dubbed in English with their mother tongue subtitles, and I was perplexed because it was actually closer to their native language, the original audio, I mean. But some people like to do that when they're studying a new language, trying to learn a new language as well. So there's a lot of in between. And who could have thought that that would become a thing a few years ago? But just to ask you, I mean, oh, sorry. First of all, about the trends, what do you think? Is it shifting one way or the other? Is there like a little tilt, or is it settling on one camp, or what do you think
Oh
about that?
no. Oh no, it's not settling at all. I think so. Here are my thoughts about this. In the older days, you were either a subtitling country or a dub country, and that was it, right? So
Mm.
as a child, you had no choice, even if your brain thinks differently, or your method of learning is through voice instead of through reading. You basically had no choice. This was it, a one size fits all, and that's that. The beauty now is that you have all these things at your disposal, and you can either tailor it to how your brain works. And if that's with dub, if that's with sub, if that is with a strange combination, you can do all of that. Or you can adjust based on the situation that you're in. So I come from a subtitling country, and I will take subs over dubs anytime. You can
Nice.
put
We
that
like the
on the
sound of
record, because I cannot imagine. So, and this is a something silly that works in my brain. If I see somebody and they have a certain name, let's say I see a very elegant Française, and her name is Berta. I'm like, okay, no, in my brain that does not work, right? So I have the same with voices. If I hear a voice, then I know, is this your real voice? But then if you look at dubbing and you hear Clint Eastwood in a different voice than what his actual voice is, in my brain that does not work. So that's why I don't
Mhm.
personally don't use dubbing. But still, the fact remains the same. If you are born in a dubbing country, you have no choice. But now, based on your personal preferences and how your brain is wired and the situation, you can adjust. So I can adjust if I learn by voice, or if I'm learning Brazilian Portuguese, right? It helps me to look at a show that I know and then put on the dubbing in Brazilian Portuguese, because I know the show, so I know what they're
Mm.
talking about, and then I can follow what is said, right? So it's also helpful like that. But in the situation where, let's say I'm in the plane and I forgot my earplugs, I'm looking at a Dutch show with Dutch subtitling, because I don't want to hear the sound. Or when I'm cooking and talking to my friend and looking at an important news topic at the same time, I use the closed captions. So you have all these possibilities in front of you. And I welcome that people use all of that.
Mm.
No, it's great, isn't it? Again, I keep going back to the days of old when I was growing up, but that wasn't even an option. And I really like what you said about how you might have a pro subtitling brain or a pro dubbing brain. Not a lot of people think about it like that, but it's all about accessibility, isn't
Mm.
it? I mean, you can be a
Yes.
bit dyslexic as well, or and again, Netflix has been doing a great job with all of that. I think audio description as well. Depending on the market, again, it's not the same everywhere, but growing up in Greece, like SDH, hard of hearing subtitles weren't really a thing until very recently. And
Yeah.
now it's mandated by the EU, so there's a lot of that going on. But let me just show you another meme we have about this
Yes.
debate. Let me get a producer to play it for you. Do we have it? There we go. it gets really messy, especially in anime. Oh my god, the Reddit threads about this debate.
Oh, it's and this makes you, and people don't think about this, right? Before I started working for Netflix, I would have not give a second of a thought to the art of subtitling and also the art of dubbing, right? Because also the voices need to be right, the intonation needs to be right, the jokes need to be right,
Oh yeah.
and for subtitling, it's an art to be invisible.
Mhm.
I think that is at the same time the Achilles heel of the subtitlers, because it's an art to be invisible, but because you're doing such a good job and because you're invisible, nobody gives it a thought because it was so good. And only when, and I must say, yes, I'm human, I'm the same. If I see a name misspelled or a mishear in my favorite show, I'm like, oh, who was this?
Oh, you don't have to tell us.
No,
We've
we'll
all
think about that for
experienced it.
years. We'll be remembered for
Well,
that one
yeah.
typo.
Yes.
Wake up in the middle of the night screaming. Did I get
Uh,
that right? Rachel, you wanna take the next one?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned this quite early on in the interview, but you talked about how you traveled around in your 20 plus years of global operations. You've worked with many cultures, many languages. What is one surprising cultural nuance that you've learnt about a new region in your travels or
Only
in your career?
one.
Or one, or many. You can list them all.
We
We're
could
here.
do a top 5. We don't mind. We got time.
Yeah.
It's so let me first say that traveling enriches you. It
Mm.
enriches your mind. It enriches to see a different perspective, and it really helps you in life. On the one hand, adjusting, but on the second, on the, adjusting in situations where you deal with somebody from another culture, because there is another mindset, there's another perspective, there's another way of communication, there's another way of etiquette, there's another way of values and norms. They're on so many levels. Do cultures differ? Geopolitical tensions, all of that jazz. Um, and now I lost my cue. Never mind. Let's go to the actual question, because this was me again taking a long
Traveling.
time to the question. I think one of the most remarkable situations or things that I took with me, I'm Dutch, right? So
Mhm.
we're direct, we're here to do business. If I call you, it's, hey Rachel, do you remember that book that I lent from you? Sorry, my cat pissed over it. Blah blah. Okay, bye. I will buy you a new one. Bye. Right? That's a typical
That sounds
conversation.
like
No,
a
sorry.
very specific example.
Yeah.
It's the only example I could I could think
It's
of.
happened before. We know.
Well, in Spain, when you want something from somebody, you're talking about their mom and the neighbor and the friend who has a car, who is in the hospital, and this and that. And this is how you navigate your way through the relationship, right?
Mm.
Coming back to me being Dutch, we suck at friendship, because what we do is, and I can honestly say, due to the travels, I'm completely, it became a completely different person. But in friendships, okay, Bill, we're friends. We're sitting on, you're in my, or I'm joining you for your celebration for your birthday, and you happen to be friends with Rachel. Rachel is also there. I will not speak to Rachel all night long. That's it's ridiculous. It is as ridiculous
Oh
as it sounds.
wow.
That's the Dutch way, right? We
Hmm.
only go what we know, from a friendship perspective.
Interesting.
Then I came to Brazil, and the Brazilians have, I think, the opposite, or literally the opposite view on friendship. Bill, if we're friends, and I'm joining you for your birthday, and Rachel is there. Rachel and I are instant friends because we're friends both with Bill, and then Rachel and I will be instant friends also, which is the 100% the opposite of what you experience when you're a Dutch person. So I think that is one of the beauties that I also adopted in my own life, because I love that.
Mm.
I love that curiosity to people. I love, hey, we have a friend together. Let's hang out, or let's just talk, or who cares? I love that whole concept. Yes.
How do people react if you've implemented some of those strategies in your home country? How do people react to that? Have you got through it? Have you managed to make friends, or do they
Oh yeah,
like you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Oh yeah, and the beauty is, and I have a very active, large social life, also internationally. But everybody that knows me knows now how I operate.
Mm.
So if I will join you in your birthday, before I go, I will have spoken to everybody in your house
Yeah.
or in your venue that you have your birthday in, because I developed and I'm a curious person anyway, but I intentionally developed a habit of just, hey, how are you?
Mm.
And it only takes that, right? And then you make a little chit chat. And if you do not necessarily click, well, you go to the next. And maybe you're really funny, I'm really funny, and we hit it off and start of a great new friendship. So adopting that open mindset about, well, and this was just in the friendship area. But I think I have adopted quite some things where I thought, okay, this I like much better than my culturally Dutch
Mm.
accepted thing. So let me adopt this. And I think people who know me and people who socialize with me have a very good understanding and make jokes about this. And even this is actually a very funny anecdote. I hope you don't have young listeners, and because you need some rating. on this.
They're gonna be very
18.
weird, very weird 12-year-olds if they're sitting here listening to
Yeah.
us talk about all that. But well, go
I'll
ahead.
you'll edit it in a way that you think it's appropriate. So I'm sitting in a restaurant with one of my best friends. It's a girl from Bulgaria. She lived in Amsterdam. We met through Uber, and on my first day, we see each other, and I saw her, and we were both like, "This is friendship, love at first sight," right?
Oh.
So we hit it off and like a house on fire. And well, fast forward to the actual situation. We were sitting in a restaurant, and she knows by now, and by then when we were there, I talk to everybody. If it's the waiter, if it's the neighbor that sits next to me, if I see somebody in the toilet, if somebody trips or forgets an umbrella, or I talk to everybody that is in my reach of my voice, and I have a loud voice, I will tell you. So we're sitting and we're chatting, and we're having a great lunch. And next to our table is a man and a woman, and I already spotted them because they were both gorgeous, right? So my friend goes to the toilet to wash her hands. So within 30 seconds, she was back. And within those 30 seconds, I have become friends with the neighbors at the table. So she came back and she's like, I should have known this. I should have known that the moment that I got back in 30 seconds, you would have made friends. So we were chit chatting, blah, blah, blah. And they went off, and we continued the conversation. And she said, you knew this was a swingers vibe, right?
Was it?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yes. I had noticed that from the moment I walked
Uh,
in. But also there, a healthy dose of curiosity to
Mm.
understand how that is, right? So, yes, that's one of the, well, Again, your producer knows me. He knows I'm making indecent jokes a lot. So this was one of my indecent anecdotes. Of
No,
course,
that's fine. That's fine by
No,
us. And in this
that's
day and
fitting in.
age, everybody's talking about how everybody's glued to their phones and nobody's
Mm.
out there making personal connections. So as
yes.
long as it's all, it's just a bit of fun, it's moving, traveling, meeting new people. Like, what's wrong with that?
No, it's so important, especially in your line of work, dealing with partners, vendors. You have to just go up to people, introduce yourself, and you never know until you speak to someone
100%.
what's
Yeah.
behind that. And
Yes.
it's something that I think freelancers, we can learn from as well because we kind of work in isolation.
Yeah.
It's very rare to, we're quite
Yes,
introverted people. Some
definitely.
of us are introverted. I'm not particularly, but I enjoy talking to people, and I find that quite hard to work by myself. And you go to conferences, and it's a bit strange, just suddenly in this world, and you have to talk to people and go outside of your circle. It's important.
Yes, it is. Also to build and to nurture that muscle of interacting
Mm,
with people, right? And obviously, we have on the whole spectrum of introvertness and then extroverts. Everybody is a combination of something. But I think being able to make a human connection is really, really important. And this is why I don't like everybody staring at their phones for 8 hours a day, or
mm.
COVID killed me. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, sitting by myself behind the computer, and I'm such an extrovert, and I need to talk to people and socialize. And for others, they thrived because there were less
Yeah.
impulses and less connection. Nevertheless, I do believe that it's important that you know how to make a connection when it's the right one for you.
Well, it was definitely great for us, financially. Everybody stuck at home watching Netflix all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a
I
lot of
gotta
video
tell you,
content.
oh yeah, that's a lot
Oh
of
yes.
invoices.
Yeah.
At least it paid your bills.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
COVID. Right?
yeah.
Yes.
There was a silver
Yeah.
lining for us,
Mm,
at least.
Good. Good.
yeah.
That's a nice way of looking at it.
Yeah. I went freelance in March 2020 when everything hit the fan, and I was like,
Yes.
I was emailing people like, give me work, and they were like, go away, this
Oh man.
pandemic. But no, it worked in my favor in the end. It was all right.
Good. Good for you.
Yeah.
Oh.
So your profile says you are best when ambiguity is high. And that is quite similar to what we do as translators, creative translators. Um, what will you be looking for in your next role? Are you going to stay in media localization?
Good
Are you
question.
looking for a challenge, or are you ready for something more chill?
No, I
No.
I know myself. And when it's so, here's the thing, and this is just the nature of the beast inside me, right? When you give me a boring job, I will be brain dead in 2 days, or boring for
Yeah.
me, right? I'm not saying it's boring in general, and it's boring for me. I need that challenge, that impossible to obtain fort needs to be conquered. I don't know. I need that. That's who I am. I also I take enormous. I'm a sucker for purpose. So for me, sitting on the couch doing nothing is not helping me. It's not
Mhm.
stimulating my brain. It's not giving me the energy and the vibe that I want. I really, when I do something, I put my heart in it, my heart, my brain, my everything, because I want to nail it and I want to succeed at it. And not only for me personally, but I want others, the company or the linguist or whoever is on the other side of the equation. I want them to benefit from what I brought to the table. So I need something big, hairy, audacious, next challenge to be tackled. It did not present itself yet. If it's in the entertainment industry, that would be lovely, because
Mm.
I already now know so many people in the industry, and it really gives me a head start with all the relationships that I built and the reputation that I built in this industry to be successful, in the whole context, in the whole chain again. If that is something outside the entertainment industry, that would be also super interesting, because my interests is broad. So if that is in, I don't know, building yachts, or
Mm.
if that is in, well, God knows what. I cannot think of anything at the moment, but there's not an industry, well, apart from the obvious weapon in God knows all that horrible stuff. No, but there's not an industry where I would say, let's not go there, because my interest is so big. So
Mm.
I'm like this little monkey that wants to learn a trick all the time. So that monkey needs to be fed. Yes.
But probably not McDonald's.
No.
Well, probably not. No, I think I would
You never
add
know, though.
value to McDonald's, but this particular gentleman and I had a disagreement about that. Yes.
Ah.
That I end up at McDonald's, is the chances are quite slim. Well, maybe flipping burgers. Who knows
Mm.
what is in the stars for me? Yes.
Oh no! I mean, who does know in this day and age?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
So adjusting to, I think Darwin said it's not the most strong species that survives, but the most open to change and adjusting, which I took to me when I heard that for the first time, when I learned about Darwin the first time. Yes. Because I think there's a lot of merit in there. And I think if you look at the localization industry, which is going through this enormous evolution, it's also important for the linguist to understand, okay, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? Where does AI come in, and how can I adjust in still executing the craft that I love and that I master so much, but now with new content, with new tooling, with, I don't know, in a slightly different role. I think it's important to think about that.
Yes, definitely.
Stay
Um,
curious.
Yes, stay curious.
Rachel, I think we're just about run out of questions.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to talk about, Isabel?
I can talk for hours about anything.
Yeah. We want to hear more stories.
I don't think our audiences would mind that too much, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. The juicier the better.
We'll do a micro drama on the
Yes,
show.
we should ask your audience what for plots, and then do a micro drama.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Or
Yeah,
they
I
can
think.
collect questions, and then I can come back and answer all their indecent is
Oh,
yes,
definitely.
Yes.
indecent questions.
They have to be indecent. That's the rule.
Uh, Yeah, I think the ratings would go crazy with
Yeah.
There you
something
go.
like that. We're always happy to have you back. It's been a joy talking to you.
Yeah.
We do have a few more memes we could
Yes.
show you if you're not sick of them already.
Oh no, I love
Um,
good humor.
Mr. Producer, are you around? We could
He's looking
hit
through the
the.
meme
Yeah,
bank.
he's here. We
He's
could
now
hit the pause
panicking.
button and
Very
okay,
Oh.
there we go. Random meme popping up.
That's the closest to forest that we'll get.
That's nature time for most.
Yeah. In
Oh,
our
there's another
offices.
one.
Yeah, I love when and this is what fascinates me about when something happens in the world. Let's take the cringe-worthy ad with the McDonald's and the managers or managing directors of the big hamburger joints, right? So the Burger King and McDonald's and God, since we keep it in the hamburger topic,
Right.
right? There was this cringe-worthy ad that they needed to be the person who was selling or was eating the hamburger, then telling, "Oh, this is such a great hamburger," this and that. But it was pretty cringe-worthy because, well, as you can expect, a great managing director does not necessarily be the great person that can act that they love eating a hamburger, right? So there were a lot of memes instantly generated on the internet, and this is what fascinates me because sometimes they're so funny, and then they go viral, and I think, wow, this if you have that skill of being so funny and capture that in one meme, I think that is absolute craftsmanship. I don't have that. And not well, I think I'm funny, but not that funny that I can capture things in in a meme. But I think it's fascinating how the meme business travels, and how language is so super important
Mm.
there. Yes.
It really is, and it's quite close to what we do on a daily basis as well.
Yeah.
It's something we struggle with every single day, especially when you're doing like a stand-up and you have
Yes.
to fit an entire anecdote within 2 lines. It's not easy, and you might get like a canned output from an AI system that's just about serviceable, just about, but it's not gonna have anybody laugh out loud, and something is gonna get lost eventually. Um, and everybody brings their own thing to their table. I don't have. I mean, I have my sense of humor. You have yours. Rachel has hers. Um, if you put everything in a giant grinder and then get some forum spam out of it, it's just gonna be, homogeneous. Like, it's not gonna be something special.
It's so difficult to be universally funny. That's very, very difficult. And
Mhm.
already the stand-up comedian, that for me is, I have utmost respect for that. But then for the linguist to translate that in a different language, wow. Because whatever is funny in English might not be funny at all in a one-to-one translation in Dutch or in French or in German. Rachel, you know this. I don't know if you done a lot of comedy, but that for me is an art on its own in the craftsmanship of translation. Yes.
All right.
Well, this was fun. Thank you for having me.
This was so
Thank you
much
so much for
fun.
joining us. I had a
Thank
really
you
lovely
for
time talking to you.
agreeing to do this. I'm sure people will be eager to tune in and hear your
Nice.
thoughts on the industry and your amazing anecdotes. Um, and hopefully we can have you back at some point, maybe with some other guests.
Yeah.
Have an exchange of views. Loving the no bullshit approach as well. Obviously, I'm a big fan of that.
Good.
So yeah, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me, and the producer to help us through this
Bye.
episode. Amazing. And I would love to be back on your show. Yes, definitely.
Brilliant. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.